Good evening and a very warm welcome to the Royal Opera House, to the audience here, the Claw Studio upstairs, and to all of you watching worldwide online via our live stream link to YouTube. My name is Amy Lane and I'm the Head Staff Director here at the Royal Opera House. Now, tonight's Insight, we are taking a look at Puccini's opera, Madama Butterfly. The opera tells of the deeply poignant story of Cio-Cio-San, the young Japanese bride of the dashing American officer, Lieutenant Pinkerton, whose romantic idyll is shattered when he deserts her shortly after their marriage. She lives on in hope that one day he will return. 3 years later, Cio-Cio-San and her young son watch Pinkerton's ship arrive in the harbour. She eagerly awaits his visit, but Pinkerton and his new American bride, Kate, have only come to take the boy away, to take him to America to raise him. Cio-Cio-San bids her son farewell, and she takes her own life. Let's take a look. For tickets or to find your nearest cinema screening, please visit roh.org.uk. And tonight, do please tweet us with any thoughts, any questions, and please use hashtag #ROHButterfly. Now, coming up this evening, soprano Ermonela Jaho will talk to us about the character of Madama Butterfly. Author Lesley Downer will introduce us to 19th century Japan and the trailblazing actress who inspired the character of Butterfly. Conductor Renato Balzadonna will introduce us to the score, and we'll hear all about Madame Butterfly, the history here at the Royal Opera House. But first, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ermonela Jaho. Ermonela, welcome. Welcome back to the Royal Opera House.
Thank you for having me.
It's joyous to have you tonight in the middle of rehearsals. And I think the last thing that we saw you here was in Suor Angelica, an extraordinary performance. But tonight, Madama Butterfly, could you tell me about this girl, about this incredible character?
It's so important for me to sing Madama Butterfly because it's this amazing girl, this amazing soul, this amazing heart. She's 15 years old, a Japanese.
So when we first meet her, 15.
15 years. But I need to say something. Before, she had a story. So she had a past. She came from a really rich family, but how life is, it is. Sometimes we have the moment that we have a really beautiful life, and sometimes, you know, we have really the sad moments of our lives. And she saw her father committing the suicide.
She saw him do that?
She saw him, and it was, in her memory, it remained that kind of dramatic scene, if I have to say. And the lesson, which it was part of the culture, you know, and the lesson, it was the culture for her, it was you have to live with honor or to die with honor. So in her mind, she had already, you know, certain rules.
So that's been there for a while, the
Exactly.
honour and also that incredible image of her father taking his own life.
And she had to survive with her mother, so she had a difficult time. And we are talking about a little girl, you know. Before, she was 12, 13 years old, so now she's 15 years old. And she wanted to change completely her life.
So, with that change, is that the love that we see for Pinkerton?
Absolutely.
Is that why?
Absolutely, absolutely. She fell in love completely, blind love, if I have to say that. But at the same time, she saw something different from her past, from her life that she had so far. So she wanted to change completely, and it was like a light.
So the light bulb of Pinkerton is her new path, her new life.
Exactly.
So the love between the two of these, clearly coming from a far stronger place from her, What is the love that she has for him? It's hard for us to understand him when we hear how he talks about you. So what, apart from the new life, what's the truth of the man for her?
It's true, but for Butterfly, you know, that's why it's so difficult for me also when I play this role, because the public see, you know, what Pinkerton is talking with Sharpless, that he wants to have fun. He's a young boy. I don't blame him, you know.
It's lust. It's very lusty.
Exactly.
Isn't it, the way
he wants to have fun, and so seriously for him is to marry, you know, an American wife. So the public know that, but Cio-Cio-San, he doesn't know that. She lives in this dream. She's in love. So when she enters, that's why sometimes I have to control my emotions, because, okay, I know the story, but I have to pretend every time that I don't know, just, you know, living that step by step. And this entrance is amazing.
It is sublime, isn't it?
Magic.
The music that brings you in. I mean,
Magic.
the image that's painted just by your entrance,
Beautiful.
and then you come in these incredible costumes.
And the costumes, and you see and you listen, the music, it's written so perfectly, so it gives that kind of vulnerability, this freedom at the same time, because she's happy. At the end, she's 15 years old, even if it's Japanese or not, 15 years old, you know, when you have that age, we believe in love, we believe in everything, you know, everything is perfect, you know. And this entrance is amazing, and the way how she behaves, she tells the whole story of her past, of her roots. That she's asking to Pinkerton, please love me, a tiny, you know, I need a tiny little love like a child, because I grow up with the little things, and
she brings very few things into
Yes.
the house, and little mementos.
Exactly. When she presents, this is all her objects, the little ones. And when Pinkerton asked about because she has with her every time the knife that the
that
father,
was given to her father, that was sent to
and
her
for
father.
her it's so important, because it's something which gives to her, you know, the honor how to live with. So
So the knife is the real emblem of
Yeah.
honor for her,
Yeah.
isn't it?
And we have this love duet, is amazing.
Now that is quite something else, isn't it? And I think for certain, how can he not fall in love with you for that moment, for that while, in that sublime...
But in that moment, I think yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, but he has to live, so sometimes, you know, the distance and the time is the best
A long-distance
judgment, you know,
relationship.
exactly, of certain things. And the duet is amazing, and because he's so passionate, because he wants to make love to her, and he wants, you know, like the young boys, you know, he wants immediately everything. And she was going step by step. I come from Japan, I have these little things. For me, it's important that the whole story in that duet, and at the same time, she sings, she loves him, but still she can't say that immediately, yes, I love you, but with step by step. And of course, Pinkerton is completely, you know, yes, please, come to me. And this duet is so long, actually, because it's...
She paces him quite nicely, doesn't she?
Absolutely. It makes her really...
In control, actually.
In control, and even strong, because we are talking about Cio-Cio-San, Butterfly, so vulnerable, so weak, if we can say that, really sweet, but at the same time, really strong.
Now, that strength, I'd love to talk to you about. Twice, she threatens people who don't believe in the return of Pinkerton. She threatens Suzuki, if you say that again, I'll kill you. Same again to Goro. You say that again, I'll kill you. This is a girl with a strong passion, and we see that steel.
Absolutely. And she had around her, you know, a lot of other men, you know, the Prince Yamadori,
circling, isn't he?
But in her mind, she had this kind of determination. This is my love. This is my life, and no one can touch that. Even around her, everyone was telling, you know, no, he's not coming back. But for her, it was, I call it like a light in our mind. When we love something and we believe blindly, we have that little light in our mind. Doesn't mean, if the other people, they don't see that, doesn't mean that it doesn't exist for you. So for her, in her mind, it was that kind of picture. Yes, the Pinkerton, he will come, he will call me beautiful butterfly with certain beautiful words that he called her when they met for the first time. And it was for 3 years that she was, with this kind of dream, and she went against Suzuki, against everyone.
Yeah, she sacrifices her
Exactly.
religion, her family,
Everything,
she's disowned.
everything.
Ultimately, the ultimate sacrifice, she has to give up her son, and she gives up her own life.
And it's so strong.
Honor, strength, and steel.
Absolutely.
Now, you were talking about just then the aria Un bel dì, where she talks about what it's going to be like when he comes. When you sing that aria, I'm pretty sure she's gone through those words and those pictures in her mind 1,000 times. But do you think that's the first time she actually says those out loud and shares that with Suzuki?
No, I think every day.
She says that every day.
Every day, but for her is the first one, because for everyone, every day is a new day for us. And, every day we have different feelings, how we approach to certain things. We are a day older, if I can use that word, and every day it was this kind of desire for her, this dream that she was living every moment of every day for 3 years, and for her it was, I don't know how many times, but still it was that hope, that light. Actually, Suzuki, in that scene, Suzuki, she cries, but he never will come back, and she was given courage to Suzuki. Why you are crying? You don't have faith? He will come back. I know that. And somehow we know certain things, even if they are not so positive, but we can feel it. And she felt that. He came back.
Of course he came back, but not quite as she'd planned.
Yes, true.
He comes back with heavy news, I'm afraid.
But still she had this beautiful moment, because at the moment that the ship came there, and it's so difficult, believe me, to control the emotion.
Tell me about that moment. So you have Un bel dì, where we go through these extraordinary pictures. Then we have the humming chorus while she waits. And then the entr'acte between the two, this glorious, oceanic, emotional score. What's that like to be on stage whilst that plays? What's going through your mind?
I'm trying to control myself even during the rehearsals, because it's this music, it comes because everyone has that. We are singing human feelings. Who doesn't want to have that kind of love? That kind of, I'm not saying, okay, Pinkerton who treats her like that, but to believe, that to dream, that something so special. And in that moment, I feel like I'm seeing my story, everyone's story. We have the most beautiful moment in that, and it's full of nostalgia, full of love, full of everything, and it's really difficult to control. That's why I'm talking like now, and I'm explaining that way. But it's really difficult, because I have to pace my emotion. I'm a Mediterranean woman. Everything I have to say that louder. But here is more, is stronger. When you keep everything inside and building and having that kind of suspension, even in the pain, and suffering, and joy, and everything. And yes, it's a school of art every time, and it's a journey, life journey.
So tell me, what you've just been talking about, the emotion and the pressure, and you know where you're going, you know where you have to go at the end of the evening. What's that like, performing opposite the child? The scenes, e questo, when you bring the child out, and then your final scenes where you have to bid him goodbye and say, please remember me. How is that with a child in front of you?
Yes, the first meeting with the child, with the little boy, always it's a little surprise, because I like to try to give a little bit more even during the rehearsal. And the first meeting with the little boy, he was a little scared, because I was, screaming, singing louder.
It's
or
a
at
big
the
sound,
end, yes.
Isn't it?
And after that, this is a play. We are playing now, and but it's so difficult, but in the same time, maybe the women, we have that kind of maternal instinct inside, and somehow you don't want to show that kind of hysterical, scene in front. And Yes, it's so painful, really painful inside. But to show that, to say, to assure the little boy everything will be okay. You'll go, you know, for a better future, and to control at the same time the emotion. It's more. It's so difficult for me to sing. It kills me really. It's so painful, but I think it's stronger for the public. I hope. And it helps the little boy, because I don't want him to feel traumatized after this production. But we'll see. Maybe after when
we'll report back.
Exactly, after 10 years.
So
we'll
tell
see.
me, this incredible production, and that scene is so compelling. This incredible production by Moshe Leisa and Patrice Corrier. What is it about this production that allows you to go through this incredible pathway? How are you enjoying rehearsing this beautiful production?
I'm enjoying very much, because it's a production, so it builds this life story, this journey of Cio-Cio-San step by step. And that's why I told you it's so difficult for all of us, you know, to control the emotion, because we don't have to play them
straight away.
Exactly. It has to be a surprise,
absolutely,
step by step. And it's amazing. It's amazing because it's like a therapy for us also to entertain our emotions. And the costumes are amazing, beautiful.
The costumes are
lighting
out of this
and
world.
everything is something unbelievable. And I have to tell that the team of this production is like a family. Because if we don't work all together, we are not going to be believable. It's not, okay, I sing the leading role, I don't want to know about the tenor, or just I sing my aria, and I don't think about the other colleagues. Or here we work as a family.
With these relationships, you must in this space.
Exactly.
It's spotlight on humanity, isn't it?
Absolutely.
On these key players.
Exactly. You feel the emotion, the energy of everyone to make it believable. This story, the orchestra, the chorus, the maestros, and everything is something really. It's a family. We are bringing, I hope, a story, a life journey of this amazing soul, amazing. A woman as a butterfly, and to resonate with you, with everyone, because I'm repeating, at the end, we are singing the human feelings emphasized, of course, with the big scenes, the big orchestra, but at the bottom line, still we are talking about love, sacrifices, pain, joy. It's a life journey that I hope we will resonate with people, and will resonate only if we are honest and believable. And I hope we'll do that.
You offer the most clear, beautiful, compelling and passionate performances.
Oh, thank you.
That is for sure. I think there's one, just to wrap up, this final line, one of the final lines, he says, "Sotto il gran ponte di cielo, non v'è donna di voi più felice." That beautiful line, under the great vault of heaven, no woman is luckier than you. And that is the gift and the charm with which she offers her son over for a better life. And that is what she offers just before she moves on to take her own life. This is a woman with honour, with strength and steel, and I cannot wait to see you perform this.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll try, I'll do my best. Really, I'll sing my heart out.
I think we're in good hands, ladies and gentlemen, don't you think? Ladies and gentlemen, Ermonela Jaho, thank you so much for spending some time with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now it is my greatest pleasure to introduce Renato Balzadonna and Natasha Jewell, who will be performing the deeply moving aria that is Un bel dì. Thank you, Renato. Thank you, Renato and Natasha, for that beautiful performance. Now, later on this evening, Renato will be back to tell us some more about the music of Madama Butterfly and to lead some more performances. Madama Butterfly depicts a romanticised 19th century European version of Japan. And so to introduce us to the real Japan of the 19th century, and also to Madame Sadayakko, one of Puccini's great inspirations, please welcome to the stage author Lesley Downer.
Thank you, Amy. So, Madama Butterfly, which we're here to celebrate, is, I suspect, many people's favourite opera. It's certainly one of mine. But not everyone knows that it's a true story, and that Puccini was inspired by a real Japanese geisha. So it's 1902, and Puccini is working feverishly on his new opera. This is the perfect time to do an opera set in Japan. On both sides of the Atlantic, Japonism is at its height. The great artists of the day, Manet and Monet, Whistler, Van Gogh, are inspired by Japanese woodblock prints. And Mr. Arthur Lazenby Liberty has recently opened his wonderful new shop on Regent Street. Everyone is collecting screens, fans, blue and white porcelain, netsuke, bonsai, and curved swords. But the influence and fascination flows both ways. It's just over 30 years since Japan opened to the West in 1868 after being closed to Western trade and influence for 250 years. And ever since then, wealthy Japanese have been enthusiastically experimenting with all things Western. While fashionable Westerners wear kimonos, fashionable Japanese ladies wear bustles and bonnets. Men have their samurai top knots cut off and try out trousers, Sherlock Holmes capes, and horribly uncomfortable leather boots. And there are trains, lighthouses, and gaslights. Then in 1883, the Hall of the Baying Stag opens. It's a grand mansion in the middle of Tokyo with billiards rooms, cards rooms, a dining room serving French food to be eaten with knives and forks, and a grand ballroom where ladies and gentlemen dance the waltz and the polka. And the star of this exciting new Japan is a young woman called Sada. Well, she was born Sada Koyama in 1871 into a samurai family that had fallen on hard times. From birth, she was really gorgeous, so her mother sent her off to train as a geisha, which ensured she would have a future, like entering your daughter in stage school or the Royal Ballet. So she was sent for dancing classes at the age of 4, and she was sold to a geisha house at the age of 7. And there she was given the geisha name of Sadayakko. Now, you may be wondering what a geisha is or was. The word means artiste. Geisha were like ballet dancers or opera singers, performers of classical Japanese dancing, music, and singing. But they also had an edge of sexuality. Remember, this was the turn of the century, the naughty 90s. So geisha were socially outsiders, but they were also stars. Celebrated in woodblock prints, they were fashion leaders and trendsetters, and Yakko was the most glamorous of all. In fact, she was so beautiful that she caught the eye of Japan's first prime minister, who deflowered her when she was 15. And that made her even more famous. Then an outrageous young satirist and actor hit town, a sort of early Japanese Bob Dylan. His name was Otojiro. The beautiful geisha and the cool young rock star fell in love, and she gave up her geisha career to be his wife. He went on to found an all-male theatre troupe. At the time, there were no actresses in Japan. Like in Shakespeare's England, men played women's parts. Then they decided to go to America, and in 1899 landed in San Francisco. Otojiro is the one on the left. This is Sadayakko. They were the first professional Japanese acting troupe to tour the West, and Sadayakko was the first geisha. The troupe prepared to stage their first play, as always, using only male actors. But they realized that in the US, audiences would find it kind of strange to have men playing women's parts. This was the era of the great stage actresses, the divine Sarah Bernhardt, Ellen Terry, Réjeanne. The Japanese troupe needed a diva of their own, and they had one, Otojiro's faithful wife, Sada. As a geisha, she was already trained in dancing, singing, and acting, added to which she was the greatest geisha of her day. So she agreed to go on stage. She made up a new name, joining her own name and her geisha name, Sadayakko. From the start, the critics adored her, but the Japanese plays, though much shortened and simplified, were too outlandish for audiences in Wild West San Francisco. The troupe ended up making a loss. They couldn't even pay for their hotel and were thrown out. Then, in Boston, they met the famous British actors Henry Irving and Ellen Terry, who were doing The Merchant of Venice. And the very next day, they announced a new play, a Japanese Merchant of Venice. The critics were amazed that they had scripted it so fast. But the point was, the audience couldn't understand a word they said. They were talking Japanese, which meant they could make up anything they liked. As Portia, Sadayakko just had to make sure she pounded the table in the court scene. And this is Otojiro as Shylock, Sairoku in Japanese. So the Boston Sunday Journal wrote, "She has conquered us, and she has us groveling at her feet." Suddenly, they were a success. They went on to Washington, New York, and then London. where they performed at the Coronet in the distant suburb of Notting Hill, and before Edward, Prince of Wales, no less. The critic Max Beerbohm wrote that Sadayakko was more beautiful and more seductive even than the great Sarah Bernhardt. In Paris, they arrived just in time for the 1900 Paris Expo, the greatest expo of all. The American dancer Loie Fuller agreed to be their manager. To the denizens of fin de siècle Paris, Sadayakko was Japonism embodied. It was as if everyone's dreams of the exotic East had come true. She was more beautiful than anyone's wildest imaginings, like one of their beloved woodblock prints come to life. So the plays they performed were kabuki plays. But in Japan, kabuki plays lasted all day, from dawn to dusk. They cut them to half an hour. And they made sure there was lots of dancing and lots of fighting. They cut the dialogue right down and issued a synopsis in English. The most famous play was The Geisha and the Knight. A geisha is in love with a samurai, but discovers that he intends to marry someone else. Her rival, her hated rival, hides in the grounds of a temple. The geisha, played by Sadayakko, dances before the gates to seduce the monks into allowing her to pass. Once inside, she attacks her rival, but the samurai stops her. She looses her hair, turns into a raging fury, and dies of a broken heart in her lover's arms. The great actresses were judged above all on their death scenes, and critics declared Sadayakko's the greatest of all. The Belgian poet Emile Verhaeren wrote, "Her features decompose, her eyes become immobile, her hair stands on end, all horror appears." André Gide, the great André Gide, went to see her 6 times and declared her as fine as Aeschylus. And Rodin begged to sculpt her, but she said she was too busy, which was true. One of the troupe's most popular plays was called Kessa, or The Faithful Wife. In brief, the brave samurai Morito returns from a nightly mission only to discover that his beloved Kessa has been married off to his deadly enemy, Watanabe. Kessa tells Morito that she really loves him and she will marry him, but first he must do one thing for her. He must kill her husband. She will mark the hut where Watanabe sleeps by draping a veil over the lantern. Night falls. Morito creeps into the garden, sees the lantern, raises his sword and brings it down on the unseen sleeper's neck, only to discover that he has killed the faithful Kessa. She has given her life for her husband. At this point, Loie Fuller, the manageress, had a brainwave. Surely the knight should commit harakiri, ritual suicide. But the problem was, as the Japanese explained, that Kessa was a true story, and Morito had lived on into old age. But Loie Fuller wouldn't take no for an answer. So the next time they did Kessa, Otojiro, as Morito, had a sack of gooey red seaweed tied into his sash. So Kessa's bloody head comes rolling out of the shadows, and he declaims, "As I have committed this crime, I can no longer allow myself to live." He raises his sword and plunges it into his abdomen, dragging it across so red blood spurts out. The audience in Paris leapt to their feet cheering. Men threw their hats in the air, women threw their handkerchiefs. And after that, there were queues around the block every day. Everyone agreed the Eiffel Tower had been the clou, the highlight of the previous expo. But Sadayakko was the clou of this one. By now, they were international superstars. They were so successful, they went back to Japan to bring over the rest of the troupe and arrived back in Paris in 1901. Loie Fuller commissioned a 19-year-old Catalan artist called Pablo Picasso to paint posters of Sadayakko. He did 4, and many other artists painted her too, including a German artist called Max Slavot. Then they set off on a grand European tour, travelling with a then unknown dancer called Isadora Duncan. They performed in Holland and across Germany and Austria. In St. Petersburg, they had dinner with the ill-fated Tsar Nikolai II. Then they got to Italy. There, Puccini was working on his latest opera, Madama Butterfly. He already had his story from a best-selling short story by the American writer John Luther Long, which had been transformed into a very successful stage play by the San Francisco impresario David Belasco and brought to the Duke of York Theatre in London, which is where Puccini saw it. But because of the huge interest in Japan, he wanted to make his opera as authentic as possible. And most of all, he wanted to see a real Japanese woman, not so easy in 1902 or 1900. Then he had a lucky break. He heard that Sadayakko was passing through Italy, and he rushed to see her. The troupe arrived in Milan on April the 25th and performed there 3 times a day for 3 days, till April the 28th. Puccini arrived a day earlier and stayed through the 29th, and he went to every single one of her performances. He wanted to interview her, but he couldn't find an interpreter. And then he went back to his piano. So the Japanese plays he saw were the troupe's final refinement, very short, and featuring Sadayakko's spectacular death scene. The Italian critics wrote that the plays rushed to their dreadful end with such simplicity of means and with such terrible efficacy as to make a shudder run down the spines of the audience. 6 months later, Puccini suddenly cut an entire act, reducing the opera from 3 acts to 2. He wrote to his publisher using those very same words, terrible efficacy. He wrote, "The drama should race towards the end, without interruption, tightly net, efficacious, terrible." Western critics all assumed that non-Westerners were primitive. One Italian critic wrote that the action showed that type of insane and uncontrollable intoxication characteristic of primitive peoples. Well, Sadayakko was very tiny. The critic said she was like a child. Everything about her is soft and delicate. Her grace is infantile, a critic wrote. Then, when she attacks her rival and in her death scene, she suddenly becomes savage. In Madame Butterfly, Pinkerton is an individual. He's not a typical American, he's an individual. But Cio-Cio-San is a stereotype. In stage directions, she is always infantile or childish, with almost infantile coquettishness. She asks the consul to guess her age. She weeps with infantile crying, smiles like a child. Then she turns on Goro when he suggests her son will be an outcast, with a savage cry. So Puccini took the stereotypical image of a Japanese woman, as depicted by Sadayakko, on stage to shape his imagined Madame Butterfly. On May the 3rd, just 4 days after seeing Sadayakko, Puccini wrote to his publisher, "I've done the entrance of Butterfly and am pleased with it. This is the part where Goro announces the arrival of Butterfly and the wedding party. In this key scene, Puccini borrowed Sadayakko's most famous piece, Echigo Jishi, the Lion of Echigo province, to use as Cio-Cio-San's own theme. He also wove it in when Cio-Cio-San tells her history. So Sadayakko's theme became Butterfly's theme." Of course, Sadayakko didn't know anything of this. The troupe went on to Spain, then back to Japan, where she was greeted as a superstar. Having introduced kabuki to the West, they now introduced Shakespeare to Japan. She played Desdemona and Ophelia, and a generation of young Japanese men fell at her feet. Finally, she decided to give up the stage. By now, her husband was dead. Wealthy, successful, she lived on happily for many years with her lover. Thank you.
Thank you, Lesley, very much. That was wonderful to hear those vibrant stories and to hear how history and travel were woven in by Puccini into that incredible score. Thank you. Now, Madama Butterfly has a long history at the Royal Opera House, with the Royal Opera's first performance taking place in 1905. Here to tell us more about the Royal Opera's 4 iconic productions of the incredible score that is Madama Butterfly, please welcome our digital producer, Missy Mills. Missy.
Thank you, Amy. I'm sure I've no need to tell you that Madama Butterfly is and always has been one of the most popular operas in the world. In fact, it's the 6th most popular opera and the 6th most performed opera in the world. And there have been 404 performances on the Royal Opera House stage alone. At the ROH, we've had 4 iconic productions of a work spanning 112 years, which can act as a prism through which we can chart the development of technology, of advertising, and of design through the 20th century. We begin in 1905, the year after the opera was completed, and to which Puccini himself came to Covent Garden to see. Here we can see Rina Giachetti as Cio-Cio-San and Gianni Zanatello as Lieutenant Pinkerton in that 1905 production. The production was incredibly popular. The world was taken, as Lesley has told us, about the craze for Japanism, the romanticism, the tragedy and the drama, and it was ran until 1939 at the close of the Second World War and paused only for the First World War. Not much remains of this first production, as I'm sure you can imagine, although we do have the original costume design from Attilio Comelli. In many Puccini scores, the libretti often refers to action on stage. And so in Madama Butterfly, there are 3 really core themes that you'll see in the photographs that are to follow. Those are the use of screens, of blossoms, and dawn breaking over Nagasaki Bay. For the screens, there's a very poignant, lovely scene where Cio-Cio-San, Suzuki, her maid, and Sorrow, her son, are waiting for Pinkerton to arrive, and they poke 3 little holes in the screen. Blossoms are a huge theme, figuratively and thematically, throughout the opera, and Cio-Cio-San asks Suzuki to help her bedeck the house with blossoms for Pinkerton's arrival. And lastly, Dawn Breaking Over Nagasaki Bay is due to the Belasco play, the original play that Puccini came to London to see in 1900, where he was really impressed by the lighting effects and the musical breaking of dawn, and so this is a really important theme in the opera. ROH's second production of Madame Butterfly premiered just 5 years after the atomic bomb was dropped on Nagasaki. A Helpman Fedorovich production premiered in 1950 and is our most popular production of all time, remaining in the repertoire for 43 years. With a vivid minimalist set, you see here the screen that Cio-Cio-San pokes her holes in, and very strong thematic links with the West and East meeting in the middle. As the production was resident on a stage for nearly half a century, it's fascinating to chart the changes of makeup, of photography, the way the characters are placed, and again, the advertising and this iconic 1950s poster from Covent Garden. In 1988, a crack team, including husband and wife designers Ezio Frigerio and Franca Squarcia-Pino, led by Spanish director and actress Nuria Esper, premiered a new collaboration with Scottish Opera. The production was like none other seen before, and instead of a beautiful, picturesque house on a hill, it was set in a Nagasaki slum. There are 3 tiers of action here over which this drama plays, and a real depiction of what life might have been at that time. We see here the iconic blossoms and wisteria that bedeck the set, and it's kind of symbolic of Cio-Cio-San's naive optimism, and it slowly wanes and dies through the opera. Esper said of the production, "I didn't want Butterfly to be a little Japanese doll. I wanted people to see her as a woman, a real person. It is the human, and in this case the feminine condition that interests me." This was reflected in her costume and in the pared-down musical score, and as you can see, Squarcia-Pino's decision to put Cio-Cio-San in trousers. Unfortunately, the production was not received well. It was slightly difficult to sell. It only had 8 performances and then retired to Scotland, where a few vestiges, what a pity, where a few vestiges of the costumes remain today. The 1993 season opened with our old favourite, the 1950 Fedorovich production. In 2003, ROH premiered the Lisa Corrier production of Madama Butterfly, which is still on our stage today. The production is clean and uncluttered, allowing the tragedy to unfold in a visceral, stark way. We're left to watch the tragic demise of this young woman unfolding in front of our eyes. And it's important to note that after Cio-Cio-San's beautiful entry, as Ermonela was saying, she remains on stage for the entirety of the opera. The set design relies on sliding screens, and we see here the depiction of the traditional Japanese garden, juxtapositioned with an historic photograph of Nagasaki Bay. We see clearly the developments in technology and the sophisticated set, which moves and at one point actually lifts off the stage itself. But I won't tell you any more, you'll have to come and see it yourself. If you're interested to know more about the histories of these 4 productions, we've created a unique interactive resource that sits online, which you can access at the address below for our online audience, and you can find printed in the programme. Thank you.
Thank you, Missy, for that beautiful look at the Royal Opera House's history with this incredible piece. I wanted to ask you, when you were putting that research together, what is it about this opera, this piece, that really speaks to you? What's captured you about the piece?
I think what's not to love, really? It's cracking tunes, it's a magical location, it's a heart-rending story. But I think what was really evident in the research that I took quite a while to do, I found that even though all I had left was sets and costumes and little fragments of material, that the heart and what keeps people coming back for this opera was very still in evidence.
It's the heartbeat of the humans on stage, and in that beautiful space that in our production that we have now, you can only help but follow these desperate stories. It's a soundbox of humanity, isn't it? Thank you very much, Missy, for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Missy Mills.
Thank you.
Now remember, we want to hear from you tonight, so please don't forget to tweet us your thoughts, and that's #ROHButterfly. Also, there is a digital programme for Madama Butterfly available free on the ROH website. Go to roh.org.uk/publications and use the code in capital letters, and that's Free Butterfly. Now it is my pleasure to introduce you to Renato Balzadonna. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. What an amazing privilege it is for me to be here tonight. And I'm really so humbled to be back after only 6 months of my departure at what is my home, what is been for 12 years my place of work. And so, as I said, I am so humbled to have been given the chance to conduct one of the most extraordinary score that we had in our whole operatic repertoire. So, but I will go directly to that because that's what we want to speak tonight. So, as Lesley said, we are at the turn of the century, and there was this incredible fashion for what is everything related to the Far East. Pincher, Monet, Van Gogh, and so in music there was the same. We had an example starting from 1872 of Saint-Saëns writing an opera comique called La Princesse Jaune, relating to this kind of geisha. Then, of course, we have the Mikado, we have Messenger, Madame Chrysanthème, we have Mascagni, Iris. So everything, this kind of Japoneserie, this kind of big mode. Puccini was, of course, 1900. He was here following the production of Tosca, the opera house, and as we have heard, he went to see this drama of David Belasco. Of course, he couldn't understand any English, but he was so struck by the story that apparently he went behind stage after the performance And he shaken by the hand, by the shoulder. Belasco said, "I need to have your drama because that I want to have." Of course, Belasco, caught by this, said a very, very temperamental Italian character. He said, "Okay, I will give you. I will give you." Of course, recorded, the publisher had really to struggle for months before having the rights released from Belasco. But finally, yeah. But you know, that was the play. So well performed and so striking from the beginning to the end that even Puccini, not knowing the English language, he was caught immediately. And so when he started to get involved with that, with a kind of feverish enjoyment, he met, of course, Sadayakko, as we said, and what he was interested, he wanted to catch, you know, this kind of very thin, high-pitching voice that I had, and at the same time, he had a long, long frequentation with the wife of the Japanese ambassador in Italy, that she gave him books of songs and everything. So Puccini started to work, and he was so eager to go ahead. So how did Puccini actually to try to portray this kind of Japan exotic aroma? As we said, it took a lot of a melody. You know, there is a long list, if you want, all with a kind of typical, peculiar, idiosyncratic meter. That's very important, this little tune, because actually is the Japanese national anthem. And Puccini actually take this little melody that for us doesn't say much because we are not familiar, but actually it embedded this little melody with his own harmony, that is the harmony of the beginning of the 20th century, an impressionist harmony, and is so typical Puccini. So let me find this how I play you again this little melody. So and then so l'imperial commissario, so the imperial commissioner arrived to celebrate the marriage between Butterfly and Pinkerton. So he take the little melody, put the harmony. That's his way to portray, you know, the Japan. And I can give you other examples that they are very, very, very interesting and very nice. But for me, what is very interesting, and that he uses many of these melodies and harmony and orchestral colors in order to picture and to describe so deeply and so detailed what is mainly the character of Butterfly, of Cio-Cio-San. The arrival of Cio-Cio-San when she has a little journey up to the hill actually has not much Japan, if you want. You know, it's a beautiful, beautiful melody. And so that describes her love, and at the same time is this kind of impressionist harmony and melody, because as the painter, the impressionists, they wanted to catch the moment, they want to catch the opener, that also at the same time describe the really wide, expanse view on the bay of Nagasaki. And then Puccini has this kind of mastery thing that he's able to get both. But the melody, you see, that is very simple, Puccini can give different feature accordingly with the harmony that he is giving. So here is his first encounter with Pinkerton. But actually, as introduction of the aria that we have heard earlier on, and when, you know, again, is about her love, we have the same melody, but with a completely different orchestration and harmonization, so that it gave a much more dramatic, unshakable fortitude. Okay, so almost we can recognize that. And again, another use if you want. So I repeat again the same melody. Okay, but this time when Butterfly is confronted with a console, and he's saying, "What will you say? What will you do? What would you do if Pinkerton will never come back?" And of course, she has exactly like she's been dead, and then she has a moment of a great exuberance and pride, as Ermonela was saying, and she bring out the child, her son. And so this melody that is the same, we have a completely different character again. So that's what I am extremely, really caught by this mastery that Puccini has to give with very simple meaning, a simple melody, but his own harmony is, I want to say again, probably this impressionist harmony, because mainly what is the character, if you want, of mainly is the whole tone scale. Okay, whole tone scale, and there is plenty of motif where is getting there. I can give you a little example. Look, this, for example, this concatenation accord. Okay, so that could be Debussy, but you know, even this concatenation, if we put together, but in the hands of Puccini, they sound very, very. So it becomes the most Western, if you want, melody, but with this kind of very Oriental influence. Yeah, what I said, there is of course quotation of Japanese melody, but not all are original one. Puccini also made up a little bit. He tried to fake out a little bit, and he created this very, very clear mixture. I wanted to, yeah. Then you know that's easily the Japan side, but of course what he wanted to represent also is a clash of cultures. So why Butterfly being so sincere, be so fragile, but why at the same time was so naive, not understanding that Pinkerton was just looking for an adventure? I think there is a big clash of culture. And Puccini was, of course, really trying to portray those two things. So at the beginning, we have very clear, set up very clear, a lot of color, but they said exactly when is Western and when is East. We have, at the beginning, a tune that I found a great similarity with Smetana, Bart's bride, another bride that has been bartered, that has been sold, but there is a comedy if you want. So Smetana does this kind of D minor. Puccini, I don't want to say that he was a plagiarist, but he has this kind of he wanted to portray this kind of business, that was the order of the day. When you get married, is this kind of frantic movement. And, you know, so I play again Smetana. E Puccini. So, but we understand that he is in a very Occidental, very Western motif for the way that he's treating that. At the beginning of Butterfly, we have a fugue, canonic fugue on 4 voices. So that is our culture. If you want, the master of the fugue is Bach. Okay, that's where we stand. Okay, so that is the officer, the Marine, the American officer of the Navy, Abraham Lincoln, that is getting married. That is the plan of the day. But is it accompanied by Goro, that is this kind of, you know, agent selling geishas, combining marriages, matchmaker. And at the moment that Goro appears, we have one of these kind of Japanese, again, of 2/4 motif, very distinguished, very thin, very classy, you know, what actually we recognize as a possible Japanese melody, that depicting Goro. These kind of very martial things. And so that's the big contrast. And then, you know, when he's talking about, for example, the consul that he has arrived, is another very Occidental melody. So nothing of this kind of Japanesery. And what is most stunning thing is Pinkerton, when he has his first aria, if you want, Dovunque al mondo, I just played for you, you understand. So nothing less than the American anthem. So if we don't have a clear who is who and who is belonging to, so that's what it is. So I found that is fascinating. Also the way that he orchestrated, like a military band. And with this kind of brushiness, this kind of really on your face. And he is the character of Pinkerton. If we want or not, he is a little bit a repellent personality. He liked to make himself very, you know, arrogant and not likable, you know. He says very clearly on his first aria that he's there just to amuse himself, to have a lot of fun. He's putting his kind of hedonistic feeling. So that's what the beginning of what, you know, just as he set up the picture and as he set up the mood of things. But what is a wonderful treating of the butterfly figure, apart of the melodies that I quoted earlier on, there is another, when finally she appeared on stage and she arrived, we have this kind of melody, this beautiful. Okay, so very Japanese. And the orchestration is a harp, bells, very chimes, and flute and piccolo. So, and this kind of also verticality of the percussion that we have. But then, what is extraordinary, there is a little aria further on, and where Butterfly said that she has been to the church yesterday because she wants to convert to the religion of Pinkerton. So, it's a kind of, and that's what we found, that Puccini suddenly tried to make Butterfly Western, Occidental. So there is not anymore this kind of verticality of the melodic line, but suddenly he said, io seguo il mio destino, so I follow my destiny. So this long line, see, like an arioso, it could be, okay, with very nice harmony, but it could be an aria of exactly an Italian composer without any influence of anything. What is extraordinary is the turning point of this end of the aria. That, as we said, we have this kind of major, this kind of positive key that at the end, it just finished with. So just in the minor, and with the word, the moment that she will embrace Pinkerton, she say, amore mio, so the things just turn very bad in the minor. So we have just a feeling behind that it will be not an happy love. And even more, introduce this melody. That is the very ominous melody of the suicide of the father. Before I introduce the great tenor, Marcello pointed that he will sing Pinkerton in our performances here at the Opera House, and he will sing the aria on Act 3, Addio Fiorito Asil. I would like just to spend a few words on the aria that Natasha has sung before, so Un bel di vedremo. This aria is an amazing sequence of how the butterfly emotions will really unfold. She starts like in a dream, like in trance, and she stated what she's visualizing. She imagined to see that Pinkerton, the shape of Pinkerton is entering, and she does it with such a precision, with such she's describing really the scene happening in front of her. And then actually, she started, Suzuki is there, that she's, of course, she's not so strong in her, she's not supporting her at all. And said, un bel di vedremo, so we both, we will see him arrive. She's taking part of her. And then she said, you, as she said, vedi, so you will see that he arrived. So she's going un bel di vedremo from the future for La nave appare, la nave is just entering now, to state that Pinkerton has arrived, he landed. And then portraying her that she's just sitting there on the hill, and she's waiting for him, but, you know, even in a joking way, I will not make myself seen. I wanted to tease him. I wanted to play with him. Yeah, first of all, because I like these little things. And then second, also, the emotion will be too big. And so all these, Puccini, he put sequence by sequence in such a detailed way that he built up this wonderful aria. Even here there is one melody that I would like to underline and to show you. And when she said, un piccolo ponte. So she's saying, when, and then I will see Pinkerton, that he will climb up the hill, and finally he will arrive to her house. So that's what she's visualizing, him climbing the hill and arrive. It's all the time about waiting. It's all the time about an unshakable faith and hope. This melody, unfortunately, comes again a little bit late. And when she decides, she's been asked to give up her son because to give him a better upbringing, and once again she will say, "Okay, I will give to him if he will come to collect him." And again, once again, this melody is "Fra mezz'ora salite la collina." So she would be happy to see him coming up the hill, even if he's at the cost of this greatest sacrifice to give the son. But as we know, he is not coming yet. At the end, after that, she committed suicide. Finally, you know, we have this. Finally comes butterfly. Okay, she's dead. So the melody, he will climb on this. So finally the melody, he's there, but it's too late. So that is the tragic, devastating journey of this piece. But you know, I found that it's so fascinating and so striking, so emotional, this journey, that I hope that I have been able to give you a little bit of an image. I would like now to introduce Marcello, and he will sing the aria Dio fiorito asil. That is an aria that has been added by Puccini on the after three. So as you know, on the 1904 in February, he gave the premiere alla Scala, and it was a much bigger version with a big 3-act. So it was a big fiasco. So Puccini, also with the librettist Illica Giacosa, and the great help of the publisher Ricordi, in 3 months, and then I found really that he's a genius. He's been able to understand what was not working, and actually even the character of Pinkerton, that is kind of pivotal anyway, it was so small, and introduced another aria at the end. So Pinkerton arrive, he will not be seen by Butterfly, but of course he's there, and he has a lot of remorse to see in which, you know, to see the place where he had his great big moment, big time, and he loved them. And apparently, we understand, yes, really, we understand that he, even if it was for a short time, but he sincerely loved her. So he's kind of devastated by the remorse and says, addio Frittosilo, di delizie. And when he leaves, a son vil, I'm vile, and I can't stand here, and he goes. Please, Marcello, come. Just a second, forgive me.
Thank you, Marcelo Puente, for that incredible performance. Now, sadly, that brings us to the end of tonight's Insight. Don't forget, you can catch Madama Butterfly on stage at the Royal Opera House in London from the 23rd of March and live in cinemas on the 30th of March. Our thanks to Ermonela Jaho, Lesley Downer, Renato Balzadonna, Missy Mills, Marcelo Puente and Natasha Jewell. Big thank you also to our wonderful audience here in the Claw studio upstairs and to all of you who've been watching with us all evening. Now tonight, we've been joined by viewers all over the world from India to Finland to Japan, and they've had some wonderful things to say to us tonight. Lucy said, great hearing the history of the opera and also about Japan at the time. And Summer told us, it's so amazing that this can unite us from all over the world, just as good art does. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much and good night.